She got caught cheating, and her first words were, "This is your fault for not giving me enough attention." I replied, "You are absolutely right." Then I gave her all the attention she deserved. Attention from my attorney, attention from the locksmith, and attention from the process server. Her shock when she realized what I meant was a quiet kind of victory. I, Curtis, was Ferdowdy. 8 years old, a detail-oriented financial executive, whose life was built on meticulous spreadsheets and logical predictions. Last Thursday was supposed to be a good surprise. My business flight was cancelled due to a weather anomaly up the coast. I was randomly. I was rebooked on an earlier plane. I figured I would surprise my wife, Clara, with dinner from that Thai place she loved, the one with the peanut curry. She always said tasted like a holiday. The surprise, as it turned out, was entirely on me. I pulled into the driveway just after 4:30 in the afternoon. The house was too quiet. Yet I thought I saw a shadow move past the upstairs window. The front door was unlocked, a bad habit of Clara's I had spent a decade trying to break. I walked through the foyer, past the silent kitchen, and headed toward the stairs, a bag of warm Thai food in my hand. The scent of lemongrass and spice was suddenly overwhelmed by a different, unfamiliar scent. A cheap, musky cologne I recognized vaguely. I cut ankle-length hair. I walked into my own bedroom at 4:47 in the afternoon to find Clara, my wife of 11 years, with her personal trainer. They were in our bed, the bed I had picked out, on the expensive height thread count sheets I had selected, because she claimed not to care about thread count. She apparently cared about something, just not the quality of the linen. For maybe 3 seconds, no one moved. The air was thick, suffocating. The personal trainer, I'd Herkloti had Vanklar a guy, maybe 10 years younger than me, who I had been paying $200 a session for twice a week, scrambled for his clothes like the house was on fire and his life depended on retrieving a single sock. Clara just sat there, pulling the duvet up, looking at me like I was the one who had committed a trespass. The betrayal was less a sharp pain and more a profound, instant numbness, a cold realization that the foundation I had spent 11 years was building had been made of sand. "Get out," I said to him. My voice was calm, almost weirdly flat, like I was discussing the weather. It felt as though my brain had disconnected from the situation, floating somewhere above the ceiling, observing the drama below. He did not need to be told twice. He grabbed at his remaining garments and practically ran past me. I heard the front door slam about 15 seconds later, the sound jarring in the sudden silence. Then, it was just us. 11 years of marriage. 2 beautiful kids. Thank God they were at her mother's house that afternoon. A mortgage, a life, a future we believed we were building together. I put the bag of koi food on the pristine mahogany dresser. Clara finally opened her mouth. I expected tears, apologies, begging, something human, something acknowledging the devastation she had unleashed. Instead, she said, with the incredible audacity of a truly self-centered person, "This is your fault." I blinked once, slowly. "Excuse me. You heard me," she snapped. "This is your fault. For not giving me enough attention. You are always working, always traveling. When is the last time you actually looked at me, Curtis? When is the last time you made me feel wanted?" The sheer, staggering nerve of the woman was a physical presence in the room. I felt the familiar, hot surge of anger, the desire to scream, to throw the heavy bedside lamp through the window. But then, the fear of chaos. The fear of losing control that had defined my internal life since childhood took over. I thought about my parents. Explosive. Messy divorce years ago, and the powerless boy had been then. I would not be that boy now. Something clicked in my brain. Not anger, but a cold, clear, executive calculation. I took a deep breath. You are absolutely right, I said. She blinked again, momentarily stunned. My response was not in the script of her victim narrative. I have not been giving you enough attention. I continued. My voice measured and low. That changes today. I turned around and walked out of the bedroom. I heard her calling after me, confused. Asking what I meant, her voice thick with sudden apprehension. I did not answer. I got in my car. Each woman left the Thai food on the dresser as a final, pathetic memorial, and drove to the nearest hotel chain I could find. I checked in, sat on the scratchy bedspread, and started making the calls. First call went to Marcus Harris.
Yes, here.
The divorce attorney my buddy from college had used, a man known for his ruthlessly efficient and ethical approach. Ankle-length hair. I left a concise message explaining the situation, and asked for the earliest possible consultation. Second call Hall. On call was to an emergency locksmith. I scheduled him for 8 o'clock the next morning, Friday, when I knew Clara would be out dropping the children at her mother's. Third call was to my brother, asking if I could crash at his place for a few days while I figured things out. Then I sat there in that sterile hotel room, ate the cold Thai food alone, and planned exactly how much attention my wife was about to receive. It would be thorough. It would be expensive for her. And it would be utterly final. I would not lose control. I would not scream. I would document everything. Make sure this outcome was entirely, absolutely predictable. My childhood self demanded it. After making the calls, I sat in the hotel room, the chill of my decision settling deeper than the temperature of the air conditioning. The cold, logical part of my brain was, the emotional part was fully engaged. Still somewhere else, watching. First thing Friday morning, I met with Marcus Harris, my new attorney. Marcus was 45, sharp, active hair, and wore an expensive suit that looked like it had been tailored for the courtroom. He listened to my account, the early flight, and discovery, and especially Clara's response, without once interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his leather chair. Curtis, your initial response was brilliant, he said, his voice a gravelly baritone. Most men scream. They throw things. Talented ankle-length hair. They give the wife ammunition for a restraining order and claims of volatility. You went silent. You secured the house. And you hired counsel. You have established control and a clear, objective narrative that avoids the emotional chaos you fear. His observation about my fear of emotional chaos hit me hard. It was true. I had spent my entire adult life trying to build structures and systems, financial, professional, domestic, to prevent the kind of unpredictable destruction I witnessed as a kid. The infidelity itself was a trauma. The chaos of a messy fight would have been another. Control is all I have left right now, I told him. Marcus nodded. Then we maintain it. Documentation, Curtis. Every text, every email, every date stamped calendar entry. We fight this with paper, not anger. He advised me on the immediate steps, confirming that since the house was in my name, purchased with premarital inheritance, I was absolutely within my rights to secure my property. I left his office feeling like I had traded my emotional vulnerability for a legal suit of armor. My birth hair. I drove to my brother's apartment and waited. At 8 o'clock that morning, while Clara was predictably out taking the kids to her mother's, the locksmith arrived at the marital home. He was efficient, changing every single lock on every exterior door, updating the garage code, and replacing the keyless entry sequence. It cost $475, a price I noted in my mental ledger as perfectly acceptable. By 8:47 in the morning, the house I owned was secured only by me. The first sign that Clara realized something was wrong came around 11 o'clock. Town. She must have finished her errands, perhaps had a quick coffee, and then returned home, likely expecting to either find me gone again, or to initiate some kind of confrontational scene. My phone, which I had silenced, lit up like a Christmas tree. I had set my rule with Marcus everything through attorneys now. The text began. Why won't my key work? Did you change the locks? Are you serious, Curtis? You cannot do this. This is my home too. Answer me. I did not respond. I sat on my brother's sofa, staring out the window, watching the texts accumulate. Each one was a small, satisfying ping, confirming the effectiveness of my cold strategy. I was building a fortress, and she was locked outside the walls. Each woman. She showed up at my brother's apartment around 2 o'clock. Pounding on the door like a hurricane. I moved into the back room. My brother, bless him, handled the front lines. He is 6 feet, 2 inches tall, and possesses a natural calm that usually diffuses situations. He's not here, my brother stated flatly when he finally opened the door a crack. And even if he was, he doesn't want to talk to you. This is insane. I am his wife. He cannot just lock me out of my own house. I heard Clara's voice, shrill with panic and sudden fear. Pretty sure catching you with another dude in your bed gives him some options. Clara, my brother replied. There was a heavy silence. I imagined her face going pale. She probably hadn't yet told anyone outside her immediate confidants the full story, certainly not the truth of how it was discovered. That is not what happened. He is exaggerating. I have known my brother for 38 years. He countered, his voice steady. He does not exaggerate. If he says he caught you, he caught you. The quiet confirmation that my family was backing me, that they knew the truth, was the first real comfort I had felt. She left soon after. But not before, screaming that I was going to regret this, and that she would take everything. I walked back into the living room. Anne Hadler's amen. Feeling a sense of empowered control, replaced the vulnerability of the previous night. I had secured my property and established the boundaries. I had avoided the screaming match. Hamley had ankle-length hair. The conflict was now shifting from the messy personal realm to the predictable legal arena. Exactly where I wanted it to be. The war had begun, and the first battle was a victory for cold, clear logic. The brief, satisfying silence after my brother shut the door on her was the first peace I had felt since last Thursday. That weekend, I stayed at my brother's place, sorting through bank statements and property records. My mind, trained for complex financial modeling, found a grim comfort in the raw data of 11 years of marriage. It was easier to process columns of numbers than the image of Clara and her trainer. Monday morning, 9 o'clock sharp. Marcus made the next move. He did not send the divorce papers via certified mail. He'd length hair. He hired a process server who showed up at Clara's mother's house, where Clara was currently sheltering. This was the next delivery of the tension I had promised. It was a calculated formality, forcing the confrontation into the legal spotlight, where I had the advantage. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Clara's mother. She said, her voice tight with thinly veiled fury, "What is wrong with you? You are divorcing her over one mistake." "With respect, ma'am," I replied, my tone level and emotionless. "Etienne, I am not discussing this with you. All communication should go through my attorney, Marcus Harris, whose information is attached to the papers. She is devastated. The kids are confused. You are tearing this family apart," she insisted. Hair. Escalating, the emotional appeal. The frustration hit me. It wasn't the pain of the divorce itself which felt inevitable. Each woman had ankle-length hair. Of the gall of the narrative they were trying to construct. They were attempting to paint me as the destructive agent, ignoring the initial, core betrayal. "She tore this family apart," I said, the words measured and precise, when she decided our bed was community property for her fitness instructor. The silence on the line was instant and heavy. She hadn't expected that directness. She collected herself, resorting to the familiar script. "She told me you have been distant. That you drove her to this." This was the part that truly infuriated me. The attempt to blame my success, my dedication, for her actions. I decided to use facts, not feelings, to shut it down. "Did she also tell you I have been working 60-hour weeks to pay for the house she is now locked out of? The car she drives? Ankle-length hair? The personal trainer she was sleeping with? And the expensive private school she insisted our children attend?" I asked. "Is that the kind of distant she meant?" More silence. I could hear her sharp intake of breath. The financial reality of her lifestyle was an uncomfortable truth they preferred to ignore. "I thought not," I concluded. "Please do not call me again. Any messages should go through Marcus." I hung up, feeling not triumph, but a grim satisfaction that I had defended my character with verifiable effort. That same afternoon, the response arrived. Kit and Clara had secured a lawyer. And their first demand letter was almost comical in its aggression and detachment from reality. She, wonka-length hair. She wanted the house, which Marcus confirmed was my premarital property and entirely protected. His family had ankle-length hair. She demanded $8,500 a month in spousal support, full custody of the children, all legal fees paid by me, and half of my retirement accounts. The audacity ignited a spark of cold fury. They were not seeking a reasonable resolution. Each woman in his family, they were seeking a continuation of her extravagant lifestyle at my expense, a reward for her betrayal. I immediately forwarded the 4-page demand letter to Marcus. I attached the trump card I had prepared. Timestamped photos of Clara and Daniel West, the trainer, in our bed. Pulled from our discreet home security cameras. Cameras I had installed years ago for insurance purposes, and had forgotten, were even running. Marcus's response was swift. In his family had ankle-length hair. He sent back 4 pages of legal citations, explaining why her demands regarding the house were invalid, and why her requested alimony was grossly inflated. The evidence of the affair, which was a factor in our state, was attached as a clear message. "We are ready for court. And we have proof." The battle had escalated from emotional confrontation to high-stakes legal combat. And my preparation had given me the immediate upper hand. I was operating on a system of pure calculation now. His family had ankle-length hair, focused only on neutralizing her leverage and protecting my financial future and the safety of my children. First demand letter was a legal joke. A piece of aggressive posturing. Meant to intimidate me into a weak settlement. But the social war that followed was far more painful than any paper pushing. Clara. Realizing that the legal avenue was immediately stacked against her, due to the house deed and the affair evidence, decided to fight in the court of public opinion. Liefer Hertfil Hair. She started telling everyone who would listen that I was emotionally abusive and controlling, and that her mistake was a desperate act of self-defense against my neglect. She recast herself from perpetrator to victim. A maneuver that, while predictable, landed with sharp, ugly precision among her social network. The texts and calls started trickling in, then turned into a steady stream of judgment. Her sister left me a voicemail, accusing me of being a textbook narcissist. The kind who destroys a good woman's spirit through emotional starvation. I saved the recording, as Marcus had instructed, noting the date and time. Her best friend, a woman I had shared countless holiday dinners with, texted me to say I deserved what I got for neglecting such an amazing wife. The words were simple, cutting darts aimed at the most vulnerable part of my ego, my failure as a husband. Each woman in his family had. The most elaborate piece of aggression came from her mother, who sent me an actual physical letter, penned in flowing, elegant script. It outlined, by page, all the ways I had failed as a husband and a man, suggesting I examine my own behavior before casting stones. Reading it felt like being sentenced by an entire jury of people who refused to look at the facts. I did not respond to any of it. Ankle-length hair. My training as a financial analyst kicked in. If a variable is creating noise, but does not affect the final model, ignore it. I simply forwarded everything to Marcus. He documented the pattern of harassment and the consistent narrative of blame shifting, assuring me that the behavior would only bolster our case in court, particularly regarding her stability. Yet, despite my rigid control, the external pressure began to wear me down. I grappled with the injustice of being painted as the villain. I walked the streets, near my brother's apartment, unable to sleep, running endless scenarios through my mind. Was it possible that I had been so focused on providing the life that I had failed to provide the partnership? I had worked 60-hour weeks. I had been traveling for weeks at a time to secure the investments that paid for the beautiful, now toxic life we shared. I did it for them. But had I used work as a sophisticated form of emotional armor? Leak hair. Was I truly guilty of the kind of calculated distance that would drive a person to seek validation elsewhere? The internal doubt was the most dangerous weapon she had deployed. It was the chaos I truly feared. Unpredictable realization that my own structure, my commitment to hard work and logic, was the flaw in the system. I called Marcus late one night. How do I fight the truth in the lie? I asked him. How do I counter the narrative that I drove her to this? Marcus was succinct. You don't fight it with words, Curtis. You fight it with documentation. That is the only language the court understands. Did you stop providing for her? No. Did you abuse her? No. Did you document your commitment to your children? Yes. Their narrative is emotional. Ours is factual. Maintain the facts. His words were an anchor. They reminded me that I had to focus on the objective truth, not the subjective feeling. I had 11 years of meticulously kept calendars in my cloud archive. Calendars detailing every soccer game. A had ankle-length hair. Every parent-teacher conference, Every dance recital I had flown home early for or rescheduled meetings to attend. I may have worked hard, but I had documented my commitment to my family, too. I spent the next few days consolidating all of that information, the digital proof of my presence, my involvement, and my financial commitment. I sent it all to Marcus. This evidence, which I had collected simply for professional organization, now became a length hair. Now became my ultimate defense against the claim that I was the absentee husband and father. The financial analyst in me found grim satisfaction in turning my personal data into legal leverage. I had faced the doubt. And now I had armed myself against it. The social war might rage, but the legal reality was still firmly in my control. I knew the next escalation would be painful, but I was prepared to fight it with paper, with silence, and with cold, calculated strategy. I could handle the lies told to strangers. I could handle the threats from her friends and the vitriol from her mother. But when she aimed the poison at my children, the cold calculation in my brain finally broke. My daughter came back from a weekend stay at her grandmother's house, looking small and troubled. She is only 7 years old, still at the age where she believes everything she hears. She came up to me while I was reading and asked, "Daddy, did you hit Mommy?" My blood went cold. The air left the room. It was not anger I felt, but a profound, chilling violation. What? I knelt down to her level, forcing myself to maintain eye contact and keep my voice steady. No, sweetie. Absolutely not. Who told you that? Was. Grandma said Mommy left because you were mean to her. She whispered, her brow furrowed with confusion. I held her hands. Sweetie, listen to me. I have never, and I would never, hurt your mother. Mommy and Daddy are having grown-up problems. But none of it is your fault. And I have never been violent ever. Do you understand? She nodded, but I could see the confusion. The doubt and hangoth hair. The doubt already planted deep in her eyes. Someone was poisoning my kids against me, and I knew exactly who it was. And ankle in length hair. The emotional breach I had avoided for weeks had just occurred, and it was a direct attack on the one structure I cared about protecting: my relationship with my children. I called Marcus immediately. Emergency motion. I told him, my voice tight. Parental alienation. She is lying to my daughter, making her think I am physically abusive. Marcus was calm but instantly recognized the severity. That is the line, Curtis. I had ankle-length hair. We file an emergency motion, first thing in the morning, restricting the grandmother from discussing the divorce, or disparaging either parent in front of the children. That sends a strong message. The motion was filed, and it sent its message, but Clara's response was not what I expected. Instead of going through the attorneys, she showed up at my office in the financial district. I was in a client meeting when my assistant buzzed in. "Sir, your wife is here. She says it is urgent." I excused myself, stepping out into the sterile glass corridor. There she was, looking disheveled, clearly stressed. Perhaps not having slept well at her mother's house. The entitled armor was cracking. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low and desperate. "In private." "I have told you," I replied, maintaining a professional distance. "Everything goes through attorneys." "Screw the attorneys, Curtis. I want to talk to my husband." "I am not your husband anymore," I stated. "Not emotionally, and soon not legally. You are wasting both our time." She stepped closer, trying to look vulnerable. "You are being cruel. I made a mistake. One mistake in 11 years. Was it one mistake?" I countered. Had ankle-length hair. The question cutting through her performance. When you came into our bed, and blamed me for it. When you told me it was my fault. For not giving you enough attention. She had the grace to look away. The memory of her own staggering entitlement momentarily shaming her. I was scared. I did not mean it. You meant every word, I said. This was the moment. The climactic reveal. The moment I delivered the attention she had demanded. And you know what? You were right. I was not giving you enough attention. So now, I am correcting that. I leaned in. My voice remaining soft, steady, and utterly devoid of warmth. My attorney is paying very close attention to you. My locksmith paid attention to the house you can no longer enter. The process server paid attention to your location at your mother's home. You are getting all the attention you deserve. Her voice was bitter now, laced with genuine hatred. You are enjoying this, Curtis. You are actually enjoying destroying our family. I am not enjoying anything, I said, stepping back. But I am also not going to pretend you are the victim here. You made a choice. Multiple choices actually. Given that the affair had been going on for 3 months, according to your trainers, very apologetic confession, when I threatened to sue him for breach of contract. Her face went white. The color drained away, leaving only shock. He told you everything. Everything. I confirmed. Including that you initiated it. Including that you told him. I was too boring. And too focused on money, and that you deserved more excitement. She did not have a response. She was completely naked, exposed by the man she thought was her accomplice. Leave my office now, or I call security, I commanded. She turned to leave but stopped at the elevator, hissing one final, desperate threat. I will make sure you never see those kids. Wrong move. I immediately documented that threat, noting that my assistant and a coworker had witnessed the scene and heard the hostility. That threat, aimed at the one thing I held sacred, gave Marcus the final, decisive piece of ammunition. I told him to file for primary custody, immediately based on documented parental alienation, attempts, and hostility. The gloves were officially off. She hissed that I would never see the kids, a threat I documented instantly. That single, desperate lycle guaranteed I would see them more than ever before. It was the moment she crossed the last line, elevating the conflict from a mere divorce to a high-stakes custody battle. Marcus moved quickly, filing the motion for primary physical custody the same day, citing the pattern of hostility, the public confrontation at my office, and the documented attempts at parental alienation, involving the grandmother. The core of our argument was simple. Clara the acquirer had repeatedly demonstrated instability, prioritizing her own emotional narrative over the psychological safety of the children. 2 weeks later, the court appointed a custody evaluator. Her name was Sarah Cooper, a family therapist with a quiet, observant demeanor. Each woman in his family had ankle-length hair, and she was tasked with objectively assessing the fitness of both parents and the stability of the living situations. This was the crucible, the part of the process that terrified me the most. Unlike the property division or the alimony calculations, which relied on cold, financial facts, this required exposing my deepest fear. My competency as a father to the scrutiny of an outsider. I had been so focused on my work and my travel. Would my meticulous calendars truly count as presents? Would Sarah see the 30-year-old boy afraid of chaos, Or the organized father trying desperately to keep his family intact. Marcus had coached me. She deals in facts, Curtis. Stick to your facts. Your stability is your greatest asset. Clara, meanwhile, Volataler, doubled down on her initial narrative. She told Sarah that I was an absent father, obsessed with my career, always traveling, and barely involved in the kids' day lives. She assumed her status as the stay-at-home mother for 8 years would automatically grant her the moral high ground and primary placement. And Mek was in an einkling fair, Azure. Met with Sarah Cooper at her office, and then later, she conducted observations at my brother's temporary apartment, and eventually, after I moved back in once the locks were secured, at the house, I presented my 11 years of receipts. My color-coded cloud calendar, detailing every soccer game I had attended. All of them. According to the calendar. Every parent teacher conference, every school play, every recital, and every pediatrician appointment. Lark F. Hair. I'd not just kept track of my work, I had kept a meticulous, professional accounting of my fatherhood. The process forced me to be vulnerable, in a way I had not anticipated. During one session, Sarah asked me how the affair had emotionally affected my relationship with my children. I did not talk about Clara's betrayal. I spoke about the sinking feeling of realizing the one structure I cherished, the family unit, was collapsing, and how that trauma was a reflection of the chaos I had witnessed as a boy. I explained that my only goal was to provide the children with a stable, predictable, and loving environment, something I had lacked. It was a terrifying honesty, but necessary. The difference became stark when Sarah began interviewing Clara. Clara's narrative of the devoted mother crumbled quickly under objective scrutiny. Sarah asked her basic questions about the children's lives. Clara could not name our daughter's second grade teacher without guessing. Less. She did not know the name of our son's pediatrician. Relying on the fact that I had always handled those appointments. She had not attended a single school event in the last year without me, relying on me to be the anchor. She was present physically, but not logistically or actively involved in the foundational minutiae of their well-being. The custody evaluator's final report began to take shape, and Marcus received a preliminary summary. He called me immediately, his voice betraying a hint of satisfaction. "Your documentation was absolute, Curtis," he said. "The report is damning for her. In his family had ankle-length hair. It highlights the grandmother's inappropriate interference, the attempt at parental alienation, and the general instability of her current living situation. More importantly, at ankle-length hair, it highlights the mismatch between the mother's verbal claims of primary parental involvement and the demonstrable factual evidence of the father's consistent, organized presence. The meticulous planning that had governed my professional life. The very thing Clara had scorned and blamed for her infidelity was now the precise mechanism that was going to save my children. The cold calculation had won the most important battle of the war. I felt a surge of intense relief, replacing the constant anxiety with a steady, quiet confidence. The custody crucible had been survived. The evaluator's report was the closing argument I did not have to deliver. The end was now inevitable. But the waiting for the final court date was excruciating. The legal gears had been turning for about 4 months. A relatively fast pace for a contested divorce involving children. In the weeks leading up to the final ruling, the last vestiges of Clara's old life began to fall away. Daniel West, the trainer, was fired from his gym. I had filed a formal complaint. Not based on the affair, which the gym couldn't legally act upon, but because his liaison with Clara, a client, violated the strict code of conduct their employment contract stipulated. Marcus ensured that the threat of a civil suit against West resulted in his full cooperation and detailed confession. Clara, hearing the news of West's firing, blamed me for ruining his career. It was another sign of her utter inability to accept responsibility. She had initiated a 3-month affair with a professional working under contract, and yet somehow I was the agent of destruction. I did not lose a single moment of sleep over Daniel West. The final court date arrived last Tuesday. There was no grand, cinematic courtroom drama. We sat in a small conference room. Anna Famsley had ankle-length hair, the judge presiding over the ruling with both Marcus and Clara's newly humbled attorney present. It felt less like a battle for my future and more like a final audit of a failed business venture. The judge began with the asset division. The house, I kept it. The judge agreed it was premarital property, purchased with inherited funds from my grandmother. Clara's attorney had tried to argue she had contributed to its maintenance and value. But my meticulous records of paying for all major upgrades and repairs with my personal funds left them without a leg to stand on. She got nothing from the house. Then came the financial sting: spousal support, de facto documented adultery, and the attempts at parental alienation. The judge awarded her transitional alimony for 3 years, set at $2,800 a month, and had ankle-length hair. The reasoning was that she had been out of the workforce for 8 years and needed time to rehabilitate her career. I was instantly angry. It felt like a penalty for my success, a reward for her failure. Marcus put a hand on my arm, reminding me that in many states, length hair adultery does not even factor into alimony, so 3 years of transitional support, while painful, was a reasonable outcome. At least it was time limited. Child support was a standard calculation, based on our incomes and the custody arrangement, resulting in about $1,400 a month paid to me. This part was fair enough. Those are my children, and I want them provided for, regardless of their mother's choices. The custody ruling was the main victory, the one I had fought the hardest for. I was awarded primary physical custody. We would share joint legal decision making, but the children would live with me, and Clara would receive every other weekend plus Wednesday dinners. The judge explicitly referenced Sarah Cooper's damning report. Each woman in his family had ankle-length hair, noting the mother's documented attempts at parental alienation and the general instability of her current housing situation as key factors in the decision. The retirement split was the last item. We split the portions accumulated during the marriage 50-50. I lost about $89,000 from my 401 retirement account. That stung, a significant, tangible loss. But it was marital property, and the law is the law. The judge issued the ruling. Clara cried, a quiet, defeated sound. A sound that lacked the manipulative edge of her previous tears. Her mother glared at me from the gallery. Then, just like that, it was over. Walking out of that courthouse, I waited for some huge feeling of triumph, victory, or vindication. It did not come. The adrenaline faded, and instead, I just felt profoundly tired. 11 years of my life. 2 kids who were going to be shuttling between households. A marriage that ended because my wife decided her boredom justified breaking every commitment. The cost was $89,000, 3 years of alimony. And the loss of the naive future I had planned. It was a victory, certainly, but a weary one. I was ready for the quiet aftermath. Out of the courthouse, I waited for the feeling of triumph. It never came. Just a deep, aching exhaustion that settled in my bones. I had won the war for stability. But the price was 11 years and $89,000. Clara's mother cornered me in the parking lot. Her face tight with judgment. "I hope you are happy," she hissed. "You have destroyed her." I stopped, turning to face her fully. I was done with silence. But I would not be pulled into a screaming match. I spoke calmly, professionally, as though delivering a final audit report. "Ma'am, I did not do anything but respond to what she did. She destroyed herself. She chose to lie, she chose to cheat, and she chose to blame me for it. She chose to threaten my access to my children. She is a good person who made a mistake." The mother insisted, clinging to her delusion. "Good people do not blame their victims for their own choices," I replied, my voice steady. "Good people do not try to turn their children against their father. Your daughter made her choices. I made mine. I focused on integrity and stability. I got into my car and drove home. My home. The one I had kept. 1 month post-divorce. The final, pathetic stage of Clara's narrative collapsed. She had moved in with Daniel West, the trainer. Believing she had finally achieved the excitement she craved. That arrangement lasted about 3 weeks. It turns out the excitement she wanted did not include splitting the cost of basic groceries, or living in his cramped 1-bedroom studio apartment. Daniel West, the exciting guy who was worth throwing away her marriage for. It comes walking with hair. The second things got complicated, moving away after his career imploded. And not even saying goodbye to her, according to mutual friends. Clara was quickly forced to move back to her mother's house. She was faced with the immediate reality of her financial situation. Each woman in his family had ankle-length hair. $2,800 in transitional alimony does not stretch far when you are accustomed to an effective household spending of $15,000 a month. She had to sell her car, the luxury SUV I had bought her, downgrade her phone plan, and cancel all those expensive fitness memberships she was so fond of. Length hair. The spin classes and personal training sessions were replaced by online courses. As she tried to update her resume. 8 years out of the workforce, coupled with the public affairs scandal that spread throughout our affluent community, made employers nervous. She was eventually forced to take a part-time job at a retail store, a steep, painful fall from the life of leisure she believed she was entitled to. As for me, I was adjusting. The children were handling it okay. Kids are resilient. Especially when given stability. They have their own rooms at my house, their same school, their same friends, and their same predictable routine. When they are with their mother, they sleep in her old childhood bedroom at their grandmother's house. A sharp contrast to the life they had known. Each woman in his family. I was focused on being a good dad and rebuilding my own sense of self, outside of the role of financially successful husband. Therapy was helping me to finally process the raw pain. Each woman in his family had ankle-length hair. Addressing the root of my fear of chaos, and allowing me to accept that I could not control every variable in life, only my reaction to them. Last week, Clara texted me. It was the first direct contact since the divorce finalized. "I know you hate me." The message read, But I want you to know, I am sorry. Really sorry. Not just for what I did, but for how I handled it. I was wrong to blame you. I was wrong to try to hurt you. I am working on myself. I read it 3 times. Part of the boy who feared chaos wanted to respond with something bitter, something cutting. Remind her of every lie, every manipulation, every attempt to turn our children against me. It would have been a satisfying, final piece of revenge. But the new Curtis, the one who had embraced integrity over vengeance, replied with only 4 words. I hope you mean that for the kid's sake. That was all I had left to give her. Maybe that makes me cold. Or perhaps it just makes me realistic. I spent 4 months watching her try to destroy me, blame me, and manipulate the system. One text message does not erase that history. The attention she said she needed, she got it. Just not the kind she expected. For everyone reading this, going through something similar, my only advice is this: document everything. Keep your cool. Play the long game. The legal system is imperfect. And you will lose battles. I am paying alimony to a woman who cheated on me, and I lost $89,000 from my retirement. Those things burn. But I kept my house. I have my children most of the time. And I can look at myself in the mirror, knowing I handled this crisis with controlled integrity, ensuring stability for the 2 people who needed it most. That is the only victory that matters.